Oh my God! What do you look like? I span round and saw my sister, stood in the doorway of my bedroom with her hands clasped to her face and a big delighted smile on her face. A big delighted smile that turned into a frown. Is that my dress you're wearing? It was her dress I was wearing. This would have been fine if I were her sister. But I wasn't. I was her brother. I scrambled for words as her frown deepened. Lisa, I can explain. She held up her hands. Don't. At least, not just yet. She straightened up and looked at me from head to toe, examining me closely with what appeared to be a critical eye. Lisa was my sister. She was 21, with a boyfriend, a job as a legal secretary and her own car. Me? I'm Carl. I was 19, single and had a part-time job as an apprentice mechanic at a local garage. The only thing we shared was the fact that we still lived at home with our parents. Well, that and the fact that I was wearing her dress. Lisa, I began, I can explain this, but I would prefer to. Stop talking, Lisa said, take that dress off. I reached for the zipper. But that would reveal what I was wearing beneath the dress. I'd rather not. And I'd rather you were not wearing my dress. Now take it off. I unzipped her dress and peeled it off my body, revealing the lingerie beneath. It had cost me a lot of money and I had bought it from Victoria's Secrets in a shopping mall on the other side of town. It was black, with silver detailing and was, as with all lingerie, very sexy. It was a bra and panty set with matching garter belt and 15 denier nylon stockings. I had waiting for an occasion to try it on and the occasion had come sooner than I could have hoped for. When my parents announced they were leaving for the weekend and my sister was called into work that Saturday to help her boss with an important case, I saw my opportunity and took it. I borrowed the dress from my sister's wardrobe and then, after shaving my legs and arms, I had dressed in the lingerie and then put the dress on. It was a dress of hers that I had been wanting to try on ever since she had bought it. And she had only worn it the once. It was a short dress, well above the knee, it was black with a white Peter Pan collar and white piping down the sides of the body and along the arms. I had spent almost an hour applying my makeup. It was the first time in ages that I had dressed fully, and the first time ever that I had applied makeup. I thought I looked, sort of okay. But obviously it was my first attempt. Lisa looked at me as I stood there hunched and miserable in my underwear. Lisa shook her head. Stand up straight. Throw your shoulder back and stick your chest out. She glanced down at the bra which had a couple of pairs of socks in it. Such as it is. I sighed and straightened up, placing my arms by my side. She nodded in approval. That lingerie is nice. Then she smiled. It's not mine, is it? Is it yours? Yes. I bought it all last month. Victoria's Secret? I nodded. Lisa smiled appreciatively. Good choice. Nice shoes. Are they yours? I glanced down at the open-toed 3-inch high heels I was wearing. Yeah. I bought them last year. Right. She nodded slowly, chewing her bottom lip, a sure sign that she was thinking, but what was she thinking? Turn around. I turned my back on her. I heard her sigh. Your stocking seams are crooked. I flinched and actually jumped a little when I felt her hands on my legs. Easy, I'm just straightening them out for you. I felt her hands smoothing the fabric on my legs and pulling the slender fabric into place. Eventually she stood up. Turn around. I turned to face her again. She leaned in and inspected my makeup. Not bad. Not good, but passable. Your first attempt? Yes. She backed up a couple of steps and then clasped her hands in front of her. Okay then. Put your dress back on and join me down in the kitchen. She left my bedroom and headed downstairs. I reached for the dress and began to step back. Wait, did she just say, my dress? After spending a couple of moments wondering about this, I wriggled into it and zipped it up. Then I walked down to the kitchen. I found Lisa sat at the table with 2 mugs of fresh coffee and a chair facing hers. She pointed at the chair. Sit down there. I walked over to the chair. Smoothing my dress out beneath me, I sat down and crossed my legs, right over left. Lisa nodded in appreciation. Your mannerisms are very natural. So you've obviously been doing this for some time. She grew pensive as she looked me over. First things first. I assume you have a female name? Clara, I said. She smiled. Oh, that's sweet. So, are you gay? No. Not at all. That's okay. It wouldn't bother me if you were. It is the 21st century after all. You're homosexual, no one cares. But I'm not gay, I'm heterosexual. And again, no one cares. I saw the logic in her statement. I couldn't understand it, just yet, but I saw it. Anyway, how long have you been dressing up? Only for the last couple of years. But I've had these urges to dress as a girl all my life. I'm sorry I wore your dress and I promise never to do it again. And what about your lingerie? And your clothes? I'll throw them away, give them to charity or something. I promise I'll never wear female clothes again. Oh, don't make promises you can't keep. You'll wear women's clothes again. You won't be able to help yourself. And if you get rid of everything now, you'll regret it. She paused for a moment, sitting back in her chair and taking a sip of her coffee. So, why are you dressing up? I opened my mouth to answer, and after a moment, I closed it again. I wanted to answer, but I couldn't. I don't know why these urges were with me. I knew they were wrong, but I couldn't stop myself from giving in to them. I considered my answer. I don't really know why I dress up. I guess the best way to explain it is that I have a feminine side to me and it's so strong that I need to express it by wearing women's clothes, by pretending to be a woman. You know, I get it. Lisa sat back, gazing at me, smiling softly. Then she drained her coffee cup and stood up. She reached out her hand. Come on, Clara. You need help. Your makeup skills are rubbish. What followed was a 2.5-hour-long introduction to the basics of makeup. She started by examining my small accumulation of cosmetics. She unzipped the bag I had brought her and tipped the contents onto her bed. She picked up the first item, a tube of foundation. Crap, she declared, and tossed it into the bin. Hey, that's mine, I complained. It's cheap crap that will do you more harm than good. She picked a blush compact. Crap. The compact also went into the bin. My mascara, lip gloss and 2 different eyeshadow palettes followed. She set aside 1 tube of lipstick, Fire Engine Red, and an eyeshadow palette with 3 shades on it, bronze, silver and gold. Right then, little sister, you have to stop buying your makeup from that cheap stall in the market. First, it's made out of cheap ingredients and it doesn't last that long anyway. You're much better spending off serious money on your cosmetics if you want to look good. I'll help you buy the good stuff. I'll even buy some of it for you. Right then, time for Makeup 101. She cleaned my face of the goofy attempt I had made and then applied a layer herself, explaining what she'd doing at every step. She then had me clean it all off, moisturize, wait for a bit, and apply a fresh layer. She then had me do it a second time before she declared that I had done it right. Looking in the mirror, I had to admit, it was much better than the first attempt I had made. She then took a brush and had worked on my hair. It wasn't long, but with a brush and a bit of hairspray, along with my sister's expertise, it was long enough to style into a soft feminine style. She added body and curls to it until it bounced around my face and brushed against my shoulders. I was looking more natural. I felt more natural, in fact. I felt, daft as it sounds, like a woman. Here, change into these. She gave me a black leather skirt and a red blouse and sent me to my room to get changed. When I returned to her room, she had also changed. A similar black leather skirt and a red cold shoulder top. Upon seeing me, she laughed aloud and clapped her hands in unabashed glee. I knew you'd look good in that combination. She held up her phone. Pose for me. I stood with hands on my hips and my left leg cocked. She snapped the picture. I posed again and she took another picture. Looking good, girl. I'm feeling good. Then something occurred to me. Why are you okay with this? Lisa grew pensive as she considered my question. Then she left her room, fiddling with her phone as she did so. Let's go down to the kitchen, have a drink. I followed her down to the kitchen. She made us 2 fresh mugs of coffee and set them down on the table, sitting down opposite me. She took a sip of her coffee. She opened her phone and accessed the text message app. She slid it towards me. Now, don't get angry. I picked up the phone and saw the last message. It was a picture of me in the black leather skirt and red blouse. The caption with it read, "Need some help. Call me." She had sent it to her boyfriend. My heart began hammering in my chest, fear began to claw at my guts. Why would you do that? Steven is a good bloke, I like him. I want him to like me, but now he's seen this. Relax. You'll understand when you see Steven. Trust me. Steven Jackson. Her boyfriend of over a year. I liked him. Of all the guys that Lisa had dated, he was the finest. And some of her former boyfriends had been total douche buckets. I liked him a lot. And now he knew what a freak I was. Though Lisa had betrayed my trust and revealed my secret, she had never hurt me either mentally or physically. And I did trust her, but this had shaken that trust. Suddenly, the phone rang. I actually shrieked a little and dropped it on the table. Lisa couldn't help but giggle. She reached for the phone and took the call. "Hi, Steve," she said. She listened intently to his words. All I could hear was muffled nonsense. For a few moments, Lisa was smiling, but then she turned serious. "No, it's not a joke. My brother Carl is sat here wearing a black leather mini skirt and a red blouse. And she calls herself Carla." She stood up and went into the kitchen as she listened, her ear to her smartphone. I didn't hear the remainder of the conversation, as she slipped through the kitchen door. I sat feeling glum and dejected. It was bad enough that Lisa had found out my secret, now she had told her boyfriend as well? Lisa came back in with a big smile. "Right, Steven is coming over in an hour and he's taking us out shopping. So I'm guessing you'll be needing a handbag?" Wait, what? Back up a bit. This was going too fast for my liking. "We're going out shopping?" That's what I said. Okay. I'm guessing I'll need to get changed then? Go on then. If you want. You'll still be needing the handbag though? Why was she going on about handbags? I was missing something. Why would I need a handbag? 'Cause you'll be going out as Clara. I could almost hear my jaw hitting the floor. I stood there for a moment as reasons why I couldn't go out shopping raced through my mind like a litter of startled kittens. I could be recognized, I could get laughed at, I could get shouted at, I could be ridiculed, I could get beaten up, oh crap, I just couldn't. "I can't go out like this," I said. Lisa looked surprised. "Why not?" she asked. It was my turn to look surprised. "Why? Why not? I'm a boy in a dress. That's why not." Well, technically, you're a boy in a skirt and blouse, so. I'm a man dressed as a bloody woman. I'm a freak, I'm a pervert. The slap across my face came as a complete surprise. I never even saw Lisa move. "What the?" Lisa looked thunderous. "Listen to me, Clara. You are a man who likes to dress as a woman. That is all. You are not a freak and you're certainly not pervert. Say it." For a moment, I stood there, my hand clasped to my still stinging cheek. I lowered my hand and looked at her. "I am not a freak. And you're not a pervert. Say it." "I'm not a pervert," I said. "That's right. Now, others might say that of you, but they are wrong. There's nothing wrong or perverted about a man dressing up as a woman. And you never say it of yourself. Have you got that?" "Yeah. I've got it," I said. My tone sounded a little sullen. Lisa smiled. She reached out and I flinched a little as she took me into a large embrace and hugged me warmly. For a moment, I stood there in her embrace. "That's right, little sister. Now, I want you to fetch the clothes that you have and bring them to my room, okay?" Remembering how she had treated my small collection of cosmetics, I grew wary. You won't throw any of them away, will you? I might. Her eyes sparkled. Now, get those clothes. Go now. I went to my room and collected the 2 sports bags that contained my sparse collection of underwear and clothes that I had collected over the last couple of years. Lisa and I then spent the next hour putting the blouses, skirts and dresses on hangers and putting them in a small section of her wardrobe. She had placed the small collection of my underwear in one of her drawers. As we sorted her wardrobes out, she gave me a selection of her clothes, including the dresses I had already worn and a couple of her suits and blouses, including 2 of her business skirt suits. By the time we had finished, there were 3 sections to the wardrobe. Right then, the clothes that you had and that I've given you are hung in this section here on the left. These are yours to wear whenever you want. The clothes in the middle are mine, but if you want to wear them, then just ask. The clothes in the right section are mine, not yours. Do not wear them. Understand? I understand, I said. That was fine with me actually, though I did admire the white dress that was hung in the no-touch section. It was a tight short dress that was sleeveless on the left side and had a puffy lace sleeve on the right. My eyes lingered on it for a moment and then I turned back to her. She had followed my gaze though, and then she looked shrewdly at me. She pulled the dress from the restricted section and held it for a moment. She held it up to me, as if judging how I would look in it. Then with a shrug and a smile, she placed it in the ask before you try it on section. Right there in my wardrobe so we can hide this from our parents. So, you're not going to tell them about this? Oh no. I'm not going to tell them. But you are. I am? Well, not straight away. We'll cross that bridge when we came to it. But it's better that they learn it from you, before they find out from someone else. At that moment, the front doorbell rang and I jumped, squealing a little. Lisa stood up, laughing loudly and almost falling over. Jesus, girl, relax, why don't you? It's just the doorbell. She made her way to the window. Nice squeal, by the way, very ladylike. I flipped her the middle finger as she looked through her bedroom window. She laughed again and then made her way to the door. Steven's here. Now, I want you wait up here while I talk to him. Okay? I looked down at my body, at the clothes I was wearing. I think I'll change back into. You'll do no such thing, young lady. You'll sit there and wait until I call you down. And relax, young lady. She left the room and I heard her heels clatter down the stairs. She opened the door to a squeal of delight and I had their muted conversation as she invited Steven in. I spent a tense 20 minutes waiting in her room, crossing and uncrossing my legs. When I stood up, I saw that the tops of my stocking were protruding below the hemline of my skirt. Not only was I showing my lacy stocking tops, I was showing a lot of flesh. I unzipped the skirt and lowered it to the floor. Then I adjusted the stockings, pulling them up while ensuring that I didn't ladder them. Then I adjusted the garter belt so it was higher up my waist and then pulled the skirt up, zipping it up around my waist. For a moment I stood there, thinking, worrying, actually planning. I was planning to go to my room, get changed into my boy clothes and then hypnotize both Lisa and Steven into forgetting that this day had ever happened. Of course, how I was going to do that, I had no idea at all. Just as I was stepping out of Lisa's room, she appeared. Taking my hand, she pulled me towards the stairs. At the bottom, she paused and glanced into the living room. Are you ready? There was no audible response, but Lisa appeared satisfied. She pulled back onto the stairs and turned to me. Right, I want to introduce you to someone who's been an important part of my life for the last 6 months or so. Are you ready? I shook my head. I was about to meet Steven, in a red leather skirt and a black top. How could you be ready for something like that? Stephanie, meet Clara, she announced, pulling me into the living room. My mind whirled, completely at a loss. Who the hell was Stephanie? Clara, meet Stephanie. I looked up to see a rather tall young woman in similar clothes to the ones that Lisa and I were wearing. A red leather skirt, a black short-sleeved top and 4-inch stiletto heels. She wore a light layer of makeup and had long black hair. She appeared nervous to me, standing there a little hunched and her hands clasped in front of her. But there was something about her that, wait, was that Stephen? I asked, leaning forward, placing my hands on my knees. The woman in front of me laughed. Not at the moment. You know me as Stephen, but at the moment, I'm Stephanie. And as you can see, we have something in common. You're Clara, I believe? I gave myself a mental slap in the face and stood up straight. Yeah. I mean, yes. I'm Clara. Stephanie stepped forward and took me in a warm embrace. It's a pleasure to meet you, Clara. She broke the embrace and stepped back. Okay, you two sit down and get acquainted and I'll get the kettle on. Stephanie sat down, sweeping her skirt under her behind as she did so and crossed her legs. I sat down in a similar fashion and for some reason, I giggled. Stephanie smiled again. So, she began, let me tell you my story. I have 2 elder sisters. It's the usual story. They wanted a little sister and since I was the only one around, they chose me. He grinned and shrugged his shoulders. They dressed me as a girl, they christened me Stephanie and let me dress up in their clothes. As Stephanie, I played games with them, I went out shopping with them and I liked pretending to be a girl. I simply figured that it was a role I was playing. I wasn't really a girl, I was simply playing one. And, as time went on, I found that I liked myself as a girl. I was calmer, I was less stressed and I was happier. So, when they grew out of it, I didn't. Of course, they let me continue and they even helped me. I think they still like having me around to be honest with you. She sat back, her hands folded in her lap, her legs still crossed. So, why do you dress up? I tried to come up with an honest answer, a proper answer. The only problem with that was that I honestly didn't have a proper answer. I gave the only answer that I could. I've always been fascinated by women's clothes. And I know about transvestism and drag queens and so on, so a few years ago, I began to wonder why men do it. I began to wonder how it felt, so a couple of years ago, I tried it. I borrowed one of Lisa's dresses and tried it on. And I liked it. It felt nice. That's when I realized that women's clothes are nicer than men's clothes. They are softer and more comfortable to wear. I couldn't help but rub my hand along my nylon-clad leg as I said this. They just feel nicer. Do you know what I mean? Stephanie nodded. Oh, I do, she said. There's also, I don't know how to express this, but the best way I can put it is that, there's a feminine aspect to me. There always has been, but until now it's been quiet, deep under the surface. But more recently, it's gotten louder. I guess that makes no sense. Oh no, it makes perfect sense. And the idea that men have a feminine side is gaining more traction in psychology, just as women have a masculine side. Lisa made her way through from the kitchen, where I guessed that she had actually sat for a while, letting us talk. She placed a tray on the table on which sat 3 large cups of coffee. She set them out in front of us and then sat down next to Stephanie. Ooh, thank you dear, Stephanie said, taking her coffee and taking a sip. So, how did Lisa find out about you? Stephanie sighed and looked at Lisa, who nodded. I told her. About 6 months ago. I always intended to tell her about me. I had told other girlfriends and at least 2 had left me in disgust, so of course I was worried about what Lisa would say because I care for her deeply. But I also knew that if I kept it a secret and she discovered it, that would be worse. I spent a few weeks worrying about how I was going to say it and I grew more and more concerned, until I just blurted it out one night. Do you remember? Oh, yeah. We were at your flat, having a meal and you just said it? You said, and I quote, I dress up as a woman and I call myself Stephanie. And you were okay with that? Well, frankly, no. She glanced at Stephanie sadly. I didn't understand it. I didn't like it, I really didn't want to know about it. In fact, I almost walked out. Stephanie looked up. You did walk out, she reminded her. Lisa shook her head. I went into the kitchen, if you remember. I was in there for about 10 minutes. When I came back, I asked Steven to explain what he did, and why he did it. Which he did. I sort of understood it at that point, but it took me a while to come to terms with it. I think it was about a week later that you appeared as Stephanie? Stephanie nodded. Just over a week. I was so bloody nervous. She giggled nervously. You were a wreck, Lisa said. You looked so ridiculous as well. That dress you were wearing, it did not suit you. And everything was black. You looked a bedraggled crow. I did not. Stephanie exclaimed. Oh, yes you did. Lisa took Stephanie's hand and sighed. I had spent the previous few days looking up crossdressing and about how and why men did it. So I thought, why not just accept it? And I'm so glad it. Stephanie smiled and placed her hand on Lisa's. Stephanie is a wonderful person. She's warm, she's sociable, she's confident, she's all the best parts of Steve in one package. She's my best friend. Lisa leaned forward and placed her forehead on Stephanie's shoulder. I wondered how far that went, did Lisa and Stephanie, as Lisa and Stephanie. But then, I flushed that particular image from my mind, deciding that I really didn't want to know. Or need to know, come to think of it. Stephanie and Lisa broke apart as Stephanie checked her watch. Well, as pleasant as this chat is, time's marching on. And we have some shopping to do. So if you're ready, ladies? Oh my God, it's late, Lisa said, almost leaping out of her seat. I glanced at the clock, surprised to see that it was almost 4 o'clock. So much had happened this day that I had lost all track of time. Before I could say anything, Lisa grabbed my hand and yanked me out of my chair and dragged me to her room. She grabbed a jacket and threw it to me. It was a leather jacket, almost motorcycle in style, but short and snug around the waist if I were to zip it up, but as it was a warm day I decided wear it open. Lisa was already shrugging into a black denim jacket. She then told me to grab my cash and my phone. I turned and walked to my room, grabbing my collection of notes and coins from the jar on my bedside cabinet and the phone from my table. Lisa had followed me. She handed me a small coin purse into which I stuffed my money, some £30 plus change, and then, taking my phone, she took off the clear protective case and placed it in a pink Hello Kitty case. This did cause a problem since we had the same phone. This was dropped into a black handbag along with the coin purse. She told me she would place other items in as and when we got them. Heading downstairs, we found Stephanie champing at the bit to get away, and before I knew it, I was out in the world. A young man dressed as a young woman. I scurried to Stephanie's car and waited until she unlocked it. I climbed into the back, remembered to keep my knees together, put my bum in first and then swing my legs in. The last thing I wanted was for Street to see my underwear, since it was underwear that I technically shouldn't have been wearing. We first visited a small little shop on the edge of town. It appeared to be lingerie shop. Stephanie and Lisa went in, leaving me in the back seat of car, trying to blend into the seat covers. They were in there for only a short time, but Stephanie was carrying a small carrier bag. We then drove to the local mall. As Stephanie waited outside, Lisa bundled me into the ladies' toilets and she showed me what Stephanie had bought. The first item was a pair of very realistic breast forms. They were a C cup, and once I had fitted them into the cups of the bra, I had a pretty realistic bust. They were a little cold at first, almost clammy, but they soon warmed up. The next item was a gaff. Shaped like a pair of flash-covered panties, there was a pouch in the front of the garment which I slipped my penis into. Pulling the garment up, this forced my penis back between my legs. It was uncomfortable, but Lisa assured me that I would get used to it. I decided to reserve judgment until experience convinced me one way or the other. Once these foundation garments were in place, Lisa and I rejoined Stephanie. We spent the next hour window shopping, and Lisa spent a lot of money on cosmetics and other essentials that I would need. I forget how many dresses we tried on in the various shops. I grew more comfortable as time passed on. I had been seen by many people, and if anyone noticed I was a young man, they said nothing, merely accepting my presence. Even the sales assistants treated me as I were a young woman. Stephanie treated Lisa and I to identical blue peplum dresses, and Lisa treated me to a small collection of costume jewelry, and I treated them a coffee. After we had finished shopping, tired and laden down with shopping bags, we made our way home. We were still laughing as we discussed our day, and Stephanie maneuvered her car onto my parents' drive, that the laughter and happy conversation died. Parked in the family garage, next to Lisa's car, was my parents' saloon. And worse, our parents were just about to enter the house. They looked suspiciously at us for a moment, and then with widening eyes and set jaws, I saw that they had recognized us. We simply looked at each other. Then Dad, he was called Frank, seemed to sag. He sighed as if he were deflating and, grabbing their suitcases, he headed into the house. Mom, her name was Olive, her arms folded across her chest, walked down the car. She walked to Lisa's side and peered in at us. She took in Stephanie's appearance, my appearance. Well, it seems you three have some explaining to do. Come on. Lisa, Stephanie, and I were sat in the living room. Dad, who had said nothing since coming down from their bedroom, was sat in his armchair. His hands were folded in his lap. It was hard to judge his reaction. He had glanced at us as he had entered, and now he was staring blankly out of the window. He appeared tense, which unnerved me. It was hard to provoke my dad, but once he had started, his temper was a terrifying sight to behold. It was also mercifully rare. Mom was sat on the sofa next to me, while Lisa and Stephanie were sat on the other sofa opposite us. She had a soft smile on her face, as if this were all some joke arranged for her amusement. After a tense silence, Mom spoke. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Lisa, can you explain why your boyfriend and your brother are dressed in female clothing and calling themselves Stephanie and Clara? Stephanie looked as if she was about to speak, but Lisa laid a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. Lisa paused, as if she was considering her words. Mom, Stephanie has been dressing up as a girl since she was young. I found out 6 months ago, and after a few days I accepted it. I grew to like it. In fact, Steven is a much better boyfriend for it. He's kinder, more accepting and more empathetic because of being Stephanie. Stephanie smiled weakly. I saw Mom glance at my dad and saw a knowing look pass between them. Though what they knew I did not know. As for Carl, I caught him dressing up this morning. He's been dressing up for a couple of years now. He didn't look too good, so I called Stephanie, and with our help, he's come a long way since this morning. As Clara, she's more relaxed, more softer. And while I love him as a younger brother, I absolutely adore her as a younger sister. Lisa fell silent and Mom nodded. I see. And were you planning on telling us, or were we to kept in the dark like mushrooms? Lisa blanched and her lower lip trembled. I'm sorry, Mom. Look, I know you don't like this, but we were going to tell you. After all, it would have been better coming from us, rather than someone else. Mom nodded. Well, I can tell you that. Olivia, my father snapped, the first words he had spoken since we had all sat down in the living room, kitchen. Now. He rose from his armchair and strode into the kitchen. Excuse me, ladies, Mom said, rising from her chair and following him. I sighed deeply. Things looked bad. Dad had been silent while Lisa had explained the situation. Now, he seemed to have made a decision. There followed a short whispered conversation that we could not overhear. Stephanie gathered her handbag up. I'd better go now, she said. Lisa looked dismayed. Oh no, don't go just yet. Whatever happens, this is not your fault. Any of it. I nodded emphatically. I'd prefer it if you stayed, I said. We heard Dad marching up the stairs as Mom came back into the living room. She sat down and looked at us curiously. Lisa, how did you catch your brother? I had wondered about that myself. She was supposed to have been at work most of the day, but she had come back just before midday, and so much had happened in the hours since that I had forgotten all about it. Oh, well, I was called into work this morning. Only by the time I got to work, the meeting had been cancelled. One of the partners was taken into hospital with appendicitis early this morning. So, I came home early. I found him wearing my dress, his own underwear and a layer of makeup. And because I know Steven liked to dress up, I thought Stephanie could help. And I helped out as well. Mom smiled. Well, I have to say that you both look very natural. If I didn't know, I'd assume you were women. Lisa beamed at Stephanie and I felt my chest swelling with pride. But then Mom frowned. But, as good as you look, I am not happy about you walking out and about in public without us knowing about it. Now, I can't stop you, Stephanie, nor would I wish to. I can't interfere with your life, but you, Clara, you're my child and you are still my responsibility. And there are a lot of bigoted people out there who don't understand about men who dress as women. And I'd rather you didn't meet them. There was a chime from her phone and she looked at it. She smiled and then closed it. She continued to gaze at me. So from now on, young lady, you will only go out when accompanied by your sister or with Stephanie. And from now on, no more secrets. We're going to be discussing this in depth over the next few days and I don't want you to be scared or anxious. She paused for a moment, because your father and I are going to help you as much as we can. I sat there stunned by her words. She and Dad were going to help me? What did she mean by that? I also want to explain why we're home so early, Mom continued. Your father and I go away every couple of months or so, for a weekend alone. It just so happens that there's a fire at the hotel where we stay. Only a small fire, no one got hurt, but they evacuated the hotel and canceled everyone's stay until repairs can be made and the cause of the fire investigated. But it cut our stay short. She looked up at the stairs. And you two aren't the only ones keeping secrets. You can come in, Helen. Lisa and I threw a puzzled look at each other. Who the hell was Helen? I saw Dad enter the room first, but initially I didn't recognize him. He was dressed in a gray woolen skirt with a white blouse. Black stocking adorned his legs and he perched on a pair of 5-inch high heels. His sliding thin hair had been replaced a long auburn wig that fell around his carefully made-up face in bouncing curls. Hi guys, Helen said. It was clearly Dad's voice, but it was softer, higher. As you can see, I can't give you too hard about a time about dressing up. There was a shocked silence for a moment. Then Lisa jumped out of her chair with a squeal and ran up to her, throwing her arms around her. Then grabbing her hands she stood back taking in our father's new look. Dad, you look great. I can't believe. Oh, I think you've got some explaining to do. Dad looked sheepish for a moment and then he smiled at us. Call me Auntie Helen when I'm dressed. And you're right. There'll be a lot of explaining to this evening. But first, I just want to say something to Clara. Auntie Helen held out her hand and I rose from the chair. Auntie Helen took my hand and smiled warmly at me. Clara, whether you're my son or my daughter, you're my child and I love you. I love you too, Dad, Auntie Helen. Sorry. I would have continued but Aunt Helen had engulfed in a warm embrace. I don't feel like cooking, Mum said. Who fancies a Chinese? Dad, or Auntie Helen as she called herself when dressed, explained over a fine section of takeaway of Chinese dishes that arrived about 45 minutes later that she had been dressing since her late teens. At first it had been a fancy dress party at university, what was more commonly known as a tarts and Vickers party. He had met Mum at that party. In fact, she had fallen in love with Helen before she met and fallen in love with Frank. He had admitted that he had enjoyed wearing the feminine lingerie and had carried on wearing female clothes. Mum had loved it from the first time he had admitted that he was a crossdresser, and as they courted, got engaged, and finally got married, Helen's look had been practiced and perfected. By the time Lisa and then I arrived, Helen was almost daily fixture. But with kids now, Helen had retreated. Dad admitted that hotel they had gone to that weekend held a bi-monthly meeting where like-minded individuals could meet up and express their femininity. Of course, there were still sections of society that had a problem with men who dressed as women, but as far as Mom and Dad were concerned it was society's problem, not theirs. Of course, things were changing for the better. And the times they were changing, as Bob Dylan would have said, Auntie Helen joked. I, in all innocence, had then asked who Bob Dylan was. The evening ended in the living room as Auntie Helen then took us all on a musical journey into the original working class hero. Stephanie was invited to spend the night as it was late when we turned in and readily accepted. I was given one of Lisa's nightgowns as I did not have any nightwear. It was as I drifted off to sleep that I thought of the day behind me. I had started it off thinking that I was a weirdo, a freak, a pervert. Only to end it thinking that this was normal. This was all right. To find that it was society that had the problem, not me, was a little empowering. And of course, I had found 2 male role models in my life, also like this unconventional lifestyle. It has also shown me that there were women out there who liked this lifestyle in their men and embraced it as much as the men involved. I couldn't help but wonder, what else would it show me?